Hi everybody! So as you can see, it's just me today on Kelly and Claire's recovery. There's a specific topic that some people wanted me to talk about today. Before I get started, I just want to say that my best friend Claire did offer to be here for support as I talk through this topic because I've never done so outside of therapy or treatment before, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I think I'll be okay. I just wanted everyone to know how sweet my best friend is, and I love her so much. So, yeah. I'm just going to kind of go back a little bit on our About Us video that we recently posted. We went through a list of diagnoses that either she or I have been through because we talk a lot about eating disorders, but there are other conditions that we do struggle with. So I'm just going to go down the list in case you haven't watched the video. Other things that we struggle with are obviously eating disorders, and then there is self-harm, suicide, suicidal depression, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, OCD, and PTSD. So those are the conditions. If you want us to talk about any of those, just leave a comment or email us. We'd be happy to talk about whatever you guys want to hear. So today's topic is going to be a little bit heavier, and we are going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, because that is what you guys wanted me to make a video on. So I'm doing that. This is a very structured video because I know that for me personally, I can kind of go into a panic very easily when this topic is discussed, and I'm sure you guys are all the same way. So there's some language that I do not use in this video because hearing these words are like hearing a swear word when I was little, where I would like get startled, my heart would start racing, and like it just sends me into a panic. So I am very careful about my wording, but when I'm talking about PTSD, I am talking about abuse in this video for my experience, and it was physical and sexual, and this, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes when you say post-traumatic stress disorder, people's minds go in all different directions, so I just wanted to clarify. So the organization of this video is I'm going to discuss a little bit about my history of when these instances happened. I'm going to talk about symptoms that I have struggled with and coping skills, and I'm probably also going to mention a little bit about how this has like interfered with my eating disorder and my OCD. So I'm gonna get started. So the first encounter that I had was when I was 16 years old, and it was with an older guy, and it was physical, and this. The second encounter was just this, and the third encounter was when I was 22, and I was in a relationship for about 3 months, and it was very violent and physical, and the violence was a lot more than physical, and it was just horrible, and it was ongoing this for the whole time we were together. Yeah, that's basically all I'm gonna say. If you guys want to know anything else, I'm not gonna make a video on it, but I will talk to you through email or Instagram or whatever is easiest, but that's all I really want to talk about. So I have my notebook because there's a lot. So now I'm just going to talk about some of the symptoms that I go through, and a big one is dissociation, and there's two forms, which are depersonalization and derealization. So for derealization, that's basically when you feel like the world's not real, and like it's just not real, like it's an outer body experience. I don't know how else to describe it. And then depersonalization is where you feel like you as a person, like it's not real. So some common thoughts that I have are like, this is just a nightmare or a dream, like this isn't really happening to me, this, yeah, like this just, like, it's not real. So those are like a lot of common thoughts that I used to struggle with. I don't really struggle with them as much anymore, but that dissociation is when it's basically like a defense mechanism where you want to escape your external world and your internal self, which is impossible, but you do find a way to, like, I don't know, like, escape. You find weird ways to, like, kind of come out of yourself. So a lot of the times when I'm dissociating, I do not do it on purpose. I know when it's really, really, really bad and I just can't deal with it, there are certain things I can do that make me more susceptible to dissociating. But yeah, that's just one symptom that I do struggle with. The other one is flashbacks. And there are different kinds of flashbacks. I'm sorry, I'm kind of a mess right now. So they're basically like distressing memories of like living the event, upsetting dreams, emotional distress, physical reactions that remind you of the event. You can also have body memories, which, like, during the day, occasionally, like, I do struggle with, like, flashbacks, but I also have body memories where I feel like I'm awake and it's happening all over again, which is terrifying. Some of the other symptoms that I know I go through, and I think a lot of other people go through too, are like being angry, having a lot of outbursts, a lot of irritability, a lot of anxiety, depression, being on guard all the time. And I know a really, really big one for me is guilt and shame. And it is so common, and even to this day, like, I go through phases of blaming myself and then not blaming myself. But it's very common to have the thought of, like, well, if I didn't do this, then this wouldn't have happened. And I'm not gonna, like, I can sit here and talk and talk and talk all day long about how it's not your fault and no means no, but I know to this day I still have a hard time believing that. So I'm not really, I don't know, like, you have to do the work, unfortunately, to kind of navigate through this whole thing. It kind of reminds me of, like, what my best friend, well, one of my best friends has severe OCD, and she also has an eating disorder, and she's like, you know, like, for the eating disorder, it's nice because, like, when you go to a group or treatment or whatever, like, you are all struggling with a lot of similarities, so you guys can talk about it, bounce ideas off each other. But with OCD, it's so personal that it's different for everybody, and a lot of the coping mechanisms are different for everybody. And it's not like when you're in treatment for an eating disorder and you can, like, sit down and have a meal and support each other. Like, it's very, very different for OCD, and it kind of makes me feel, kind of made me, like, relate PTSD to that too. Like, it's very, very personal. It's not like you can sit in a group of people and talk about it and receive support and ideas. It's always been a very personal thing that I've had to talk about in, like, a specific trauma group, which is still a little iffy. And then a lot of the work that I've done is in individual therapy, whether it be outpatient or while I'm in treatment. So yeah, I just thought I'd talk about that. I'm not really sure. I know this has happened to me. I don't really know any information about this in relation to PTSD, but another thing that I struggle with is sleep paralysis. And I find, like, my psychiatrist was explaining to me, like, the less sleep you have, the more stressed you are before you go to bed, the more likely it is to happen. And it's basically when you wake up in the wrong sleep cycle, or you can be awake and you feel like it's going on for hours. And I mean hours. And you cannot move, you cannot talk, you cannot do anything. Like, you are just there. And I also have hallucinations with it. So I hear voices, I see things going, like I see things on the wall, and occasionally I do have nightmares or flashbacks during this period, or body memories. But it was very, very prominent. Like beginning of fall of last semester, it went on for a long time, and it was happening all the time because like I was having flashbacks more and having my symptoms were just flaring up all the time, and I was afraid to sleep, so I wasn't sleeping good. I was very, very stressed and overwhelmed with all areas of my life, with like fighting to stay out of treatment for the eating disorder, and the symptoms were really strong for the trauma. So overall, like, I was just a bundle of stress, especially at night. And I found out that the more stressed I was and the more I resisted sleeping, the more susceptible it was to happen. And it was happening all the time. It started happening during the day if I'd like lay down for a little bit, but it's getting better. So if you're noticing that happening, it is called sleep paralysis. It is a real thing. I don't know if it's really related to PTSD or not. It's just something that I have gone through, and it sucks. Another thing that I feel like, even with like the eating disorder and the depression and whatnot, basically with all my illnesses, but I specifically feel like this for PTSD, is like I feel very, very detached and very, very alone. I think that's where I'm gonna get into the eating disorder a little bit. So I don't know, this might be a little bit, it might be a lot of information for someone with an eating disorder to listen to, but I am gonna get into it a little bit. But when I came home from my last treatment stay, I previously was struggling with, more bulimia, with restrictive tendencies, and when I came home, it did turn into anorexia. I worked through a lot of trauma while I was gone, and I felt like I kind of left with, like, open doors, I guess you could say, but I was by no means in a safe place in my head when it came to this topic. I did start feeling like I was worthy again, and there was times where I wasn't blaming myself, but everything kind of fell apart again, and I really used the eating disorder to A, block it out, and B, I just wanted to get to the point of fragility so that people wouldn't want to look at me, they wouldn't want to touch me, I would be unlovable, I would just, like, everyone would turn away from me, and that's kind of what I used the eating disorder for, as well as self-harm previously. Before treatment, I was self-harming a lot, and it was kind of like so that people, like, would, like, if something were to happen, like, people would be turned off by that. And even when it came to relationships, like, I would try and, like, distance myself from guys by, like, the eating disorder, with it, me thinking, like, people are going to be unattracted to me, and the self-harm because people think it's weird and all sorts of stuff. So those intermingled a lot, and they still do, because I have been struggling with this again recently. So yeah, but you just feel very alone with it, but you are not alone. It takes years, like, I don't know, there's still memories that come that I haven't remembered. The more treatment I've had, the more memories that I start to remember. It's very, very difficult to deal with, and there's different ways that I handle it. Like, sometimes I'll isolate and be in, like, the tightest possible space ever, or I'll be the opposite and do things that I'm not even going to discuss because it's not appropriate. So I'm just going to move on now and talk about ways that I cope with it. One thing that is on my blog, and I promise I will put our blog names underneath this because we do have coping skills that me, Claire, and I both use. Some of them are different. Some of them have like directions on how to make them. But I'm just gonna briefly go over some of them. But the one thing that I have found very, very helpful is, especially before I go to bed, like, I create a safe environment. You can kind of see, like, over there, I have a picture of my nephew. I have my owl head wig right here because he's really soft and I just like the different textures that he has. I have my essential oils, which this one's lavender, but I have a few different kinds. And then I have my calming jar, and I have, see, it's really pretty. I have like at least 8 of these, all different sizes, so I keep one by my bed also, and a little LED light because I used to like wake up and get into a frenzy and I'd be pacing, and then like I'd just get overstimulated with turning the light on and then all these whatever. So I got a little LED light, so if I'm struggling, like, I stay in bed. Usually half an hour before I go to bed, I light a candle with a gentle scent, or I put my essential oil diffuser on, just to kind of scent up my room with something calming. I have a lot of blankets because one thing I really learned in school, and I have found very, very helpful, is that deep pressure is very, very calming. So I do have a lot of blankets and pillows just to put on top of myself before I go to bed, just to kind of ground myself and feel safe. When I'm out in public, I usually have a calming jar. I usually have an essential oil to smell. I always have a journal on me, and I like carry a picture of my nephew. I also have a stone that, even like if I'm in a presentation, I'm really, really nervous, like I'll hold it. So those are some things I do in public, but the main thing that I realized that I was doing, not wrong, but that wasn't helpful, is I'm always sitting like this. And when you're struggling with your symptoms, it's very, very, very important to stay grounded. I didn't really realize the importance of it. I'm very evidence-based, and when I learn, like, everything that I utilize, I've really, like, learned from school or from, like, specific therapists. But they would always talk about grounding and techniques and different things, which were helpful. I mean, I'm not going to dismiss the stuff that I've learned because it is helpful. But I took a mindfulness course last semester, and this semester I'm taking yoga, and I really, really learned what it means to ground yourself. And for me, when I'm having a hard time or I'm feeling very ungrounded, and it may sound silly, but I go into downward dog because I'm literally grounding the corners of my, like, all 4 corners of my feet are dug into the ground. My hands are open, and like you just push, and like I think of the word integration, and you're pushing, and like you're pushing your hands to the ground, you're pushing your feet, and I kind of think of like this whole integration that's going on, and all, like, so like your limbs, like your upper body and your lower body is fully in touch with the ground, which makes me think of the fact that, like, I am safe. Like, I'm in this area, like, I'm in this room, this is where my body is right now. And doing, like, yoga in public has become, like, so common. So if you go into downward dog in public, like, people are just gonna think you really like yoga. Like, it's not, I don't think it's that weird anymore. Like, I see people do stop, drop, and pose, like, selfies all the time. So it's really not that weird, and it's something that does really, really help ground me. If I am unable to do that, or if I want to utilize another tool, I do use a lot of visualization and use my 5 senses. So 5 things you can smell, 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear, so on. Or especially like if you're like in public, just stop and like really focus on what's in front of you. Name everything you can see, all the things you could hear, all the things you could feel, like different textures. I don't know, just like try to use your body as a coping skill has really helped me. I don't know. But I mean, everything that I do might not work for you. Those are just some things that I do use when I'm struggling with it. So I think that's all I'm going to talk about for today. If you guys want any more information or want me to delve deeper into anything, please let me know. Again, this was my first video on this topic, so I wasn't really sure what to talk about or where to go. So, yeah. Have a good night. Bye.